Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and another episode of Logic Kelly speaking and the topic of great governance again. Thrilled to have with me today Michael Walters, former councillor, City of Edmonton. How long were you councillor again, Michael?
48 years. No,
Okay,
eight years.
yeah,
Yeah,
48.
felt like 48 years some days, but
Yeah,
eight terms.
thus you're on the other side of it now,
Yeah.
right? So there you go.
Mm.
Thanks, Michael, for joining me today. And I'm going to same script as we've had with other guests is I'm going to ask Michael a few questions and get his response and maybe might open up the door for a little bit of back and forth. But on that theme of great governance, simply, I guess, Michael, what does that term mean to you right now, great governance? Like you're now on the other side, so maybe it's a little different. I don't know.
Well, thinking back to my recent time on council, which is, in a political environment, I think one thing that I'd say firstly is that good politics doesn't always lead to good governance, which is part of the tension that I think elected municipal folks live in. Is you want to be a good politician, but sometimes that leads to getting into the weeds too much, focusing on things that really isn't in your lane or at your level. So you have to be very careful, and I think good governance essentially is being focused on your agenda, as much as that can be a collective agenda on a council, as much as you can achieve that, which leads to a clear vision for your municipality, and is the sort of foundation for the direction that you provide to your administration, and to some degree being part of designing the strategy to implement that vision. I think being a master of those things as a governor is really important, and there's a discipline that's involved or required to understand what your agenda is, translate that into a vision that people can buy into, help design the strategy, and then recognize that implementation of that strategy is in the purview of your hired administrators. So being a master of that discipline is really important. I would also just add that it is also in any governance, whether it's business, private sector, public sector, government, or whatever, making sure that you understand your job is oversight as well, which part of that is sniffing out problems and having your ear to the ground for problems, which can and likely do emerge in most organizations. You don't want to be out, necessarily looking for them, certainly not creating them, but just, being mindful that, and like I said, sniffing them out and having your ear open for them, and making sure that you're stewarding a good culture and modeling a good culture that will permeate through the whole organization. I think those are sort of secondary points worth considering.
Well put. I just see my visual of a strategic planning framework that I've used, and you've checked off many of the layers that I built into that, especially the role. Understanding your role as an elected official versus admin. You use the term mastery, and I love that. In that, I intentionally use the term great governance because I think it's something we need to be striving towards is being better at our craft. And I think sometimes traditionally when if we take the time or spend the money, heaven forbid, in pursuing that ourselves as public service agents, sometimes it doesn't smell right to the public. I don't know why. Maybe because it's public dollars and there's more criticism of spending public dollars in that way. I don't know, but I think it is a worthy pursuit. It'd be really cool to see something regionally
Right.
with one of our learning institutions in great governance, pursuit of great governance in some way.
I think politics these days generally is sort of a world of mistrust, very hyper partisan, and that people don't necessarily trust each other as much. And so the tendency to get into the weeds and sort of chase the specifics and the details is a lot higher. And governance is like, to be a governor, like the sort of archetype of a governor is like a serious kind of looking down over, and I feel like we, like I see and observe a lot of elected officials acting more like sort of program designers and managers in some cases. And it's not that they don't have the ability to be governors. I think there's just this force and this pull into the weeds that I've observed over the last number of years. I think it was, I don't know if it's a George Cuffism or not. Am I allowed to mention George's name on your show?
He's a good friend. So yeah, for
But
sure.
the nose in, fingers out, and
Yeah.
and and I think I sort of amended that a couple of years ago when I worried about politicians or elected officials that have nose in, fingers in, and they're wearing a hazmat suit to work. And we tend to get, the tendency is to get too involved, and I think we got to be, that's what we have to be really mindful of as governors.
Sure. So second question that I've typically asked is, so given where we're at in the current state of governance, is there one thing that you'd like to see changed for the better, given our current state?
Yeah, I think that noting the earlier analysis about the challenge with the challenge relationship between politics and good politics and good governance, I would actually consider setting up more arm's length commissions where you're engaging more folks from the sort of kind of private sphere. That doesn't automatically just mean business, but from other public institutions that are non-governmental, to whether it be land use. Like, I was always amazed at my 8 years on council how much of that time was spent going through land use bylaws and rezoning issues, where we could spend 8 hours talking about a switch from RF1 to RF3 in a
Yeah.
per neighborhood, where I think there are sort of professional capacities and a variety of experiences that exist in the community outside of government that could be better utilized. Some municipalities do have land use and planning commissions, transit commissions, housing commissions, that tend to kind of use more of a utility mindset than kind of a political mindset. So I think the particularly larger municipalities beginning to think like that would probably be I think, a good step forward.
I think it would help in that other issue that you identified, which is trying to stay at the highest level, trying to stay at the strategic governing level. You I would never expect, but I think many do, that elected officials would have all of the background and experience in every area to make a decision, when you wouldn't
Well,
expect that of anyone.
that's right. And I think a great example, like the city of Edmonton has two public members on its audit committee, just to have that outside voice that helps. Because, the audit function itself, while very important to every municipality to make sure that there is, kind of a whistleblower component, review and assessment of all major projects. You have cities that have over 70 lines of business. You need the audit function. But it's also kind of a gotcha opportunity for politicians that are oriented towards that kind of behavior. So you have public members to sort of offset that, to provide that kind of clean outside perspective. And I think, I don't know, like, and even the fact that the city of Edmonton has its own utility that oversees, it regulates EPCOR, but it also regulates its own waste system. It's a full cost accounting approach. They have a paid utility advisor, which provides expert advice. I think you can just use the sort of the broader polis, if you will, to interject a Greek term into our conversation, to more effectively deliver good governance on behalf of your citizens.
We'll have another conversation about some of those gotcha things that you've encountered. I'm sure it'll be a lengthy conversation. So final question I like to ask is, given what we've chatted about, is there anything going on right now or somewhere on the near horizon that inspires you about the opportunities in this area of governance?
Well, it's a really good question, and I was thinking about this. inspiration is maybe a little bit light for me at the moment. I tend to feel more worried these days, to be just really honest, than I am inspired. I think that governance at the municipal government level has become quite technical, where you could have a lot of activists that, are managed to win seats on council. You can have a lot of people who used to work for the municipalities themselves, so former administrators, who are all very bright, earnest, community-minded people, but often behave like managers, or their intuition is to be like a manager or a project designer. So I feel that starts to muddle and confuse the people who are the actual administrators. So I think back to my first answer to your first question, when you have a governance body that's really focused on the agenda, that's translated into a clear, coherent vision with a really effective strategy, then the direction that you provide to your paid administration to deliver on that is probably very clear and helpful. And when governors start out at more of a technical level, and you don't have a cohesive, unified vision, that makes it really challenging for your administrators, which then affects their job performance and what they're actually delivering, which then creates more fodder for those governors to feel the need to get even more engaged at sort of a micromanagement kind of up level. And so it becomes self-perpetuating. And I think sort of back to the discipline that's required among governors, that's something we have to be really thoughtful of, and probably more intentional about in our communities.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and this isn't about peddling my wares, but you're saying all the things that open doors for me to talk with municipalities right now, and I like to get back to basics with them about, why we're in the business of providing governance, and it's for people's well-being and joy long term. So, if maybe both sides could keep that in mind, there's
Right.
better, richer conversations that we might have.
And it's like it's a team effort. You the elected officials set the agenda. It's always be about making the administration's job to deliver on those directions, and feel like it's gotten muddled, and it's increasingly muddled. And that's something that, people like you with your experience, Kelly, have a lot to offer. So I'm really happy to have this conversation with you.
Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Appreciate much gratitude for the time you spent at the council level. Anyone that steps up, especially in the size of municipality that you were, an elected official, I much appreciate the hours and dedication to great governance. And I'm sure we'll chat more. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure. Take care.
Yeah.